Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and this week I have the pleasure of speaking with Christian thriller writer Mary Alford. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you so much, Ann. I'm happy to be here.
And normally I would have a video to go with this, but since the connection that doesn't work for video, this episode will only be in audio. So just so you know, if you don't see a YouTube video, that's why. So why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners, Mary?
Well, my name is Mary Alford, and I'm from a very rural area in Texas. I am married to my husband. We've been together for going on 39 years now, and we have 2 sons and 3 granddaughters. I live out in the country, and we have 70 acres out in the country where we have 1 dog and 2 very spoiled kitty cats. And we just have our own little, it's a very quiet community where there's a lot of older people out here, and we just kind of have a fellowship with the neighbors several times a week, and it's just very enjoyable. I used to go, but I really didn't pursue it until much later. Is everything okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, in 2012, I entered a contest through Love Inspired Suspense, and I was selected to be one of the people that would present to an editor there. And at the time, I didn't realize in the mountains in Colorado. So we ended up having to drive into a town called Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And I sat in front of they had a little Ace Hardware store that had internet service. So I sat in front of the Ace Hardware store with internet service, and I typed in my presentation, and I honestly couldn't tell you what I had going on because it was so nerve-wracking. But by the time it ended, I ended up getting selected to present the full manuscript to the editor. And from there, I ended up getting published at the end of the year. And I've done 12 books with them so far, and I'm working on a new contract with them now. And then about a couple of years back, I submitted a proposal to my agent, who submitted it to Revell, and it was accepted from the proposal. So that was the beginning of Among the Innocent, which came out today.
Wow. Do you know you're my 11th Revell author?
Really? That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Right. I talked to Patricia
They
Bradley.
have so many great authors there.
Right. I talked to Patricia Bradley, Sean Smucker. Elizabeth Goddard was one of my first because I loved her work and I reached out to her. And so Karen Steele sent me a list of her authors. And from there, like I said, I talked to several. And yeah, so sorry about that. My phone's going off. So it's just great because I love the books that have been published, and a couple of authors have launched books on the same day. So it's just amazing. So what inspired you to become a writer?
I think it was just a natural transition from being a reader. I can't remember really when I even started reading. It just seems like I always had a book in my hand. And I would start out reading like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. And I really got a feel, I just enjoyed the suspense books more than anything. And from there, I started reading Phyllis Whitney, Victoria Holt, Mary Stewart. And I'm like, I want to try writing one of these. I think I can do this. So I actually did write a book when I was a preteen, and it was just not very good at all. But again, it took several years before I actually took it seriously. You know, life gets in the way. You have a family, you have responsibilities. But then I finally said, okay, I feel like this is what God has called me to do. I really need to focus on this.
Wow. Because I love reading suspense, and I'm trying to, well, not at the moment, but I've tried writing suspense, and I had to put it aside because that was a little bit harder for me. So how much research went into writing your suspense books?
Well, there actually is a lot because especially the ones that involve the Amish communities. And a lot of times there's not necessarily a lot of information. Like St. Ignatius there was, but some of the communities I've written about, there's not a lot of online information. So I reach out to people that I know that are kind of in that area that can help me out with the details that I don't know. But with Among Innocent, I said it in the St. Ignatius Amish community, and researching it was such a blast because there's so many interesting things about that community that when I started out, I didn't realize, but they actually added to the book, to the suspense of the book. I didn't realize that the community itself and the town are all sitting on tribal land. They sit on the Flathead Indian reservation. So you've got 3 different police forces that work that particular area, and they have to work together. And, you know, sometimes that's not always easy, but that I put that into the book as well, because I thought that was a really interesting aspect to have 3 different law enforcement agencies called in to work a case. And in this case, it was a serial killer case. And, you know, everybody gets along okay. And then another thing that I found was really, really interesting about the St. Ignatius area is there's a mission there called the St. Ignatius Mission. And there are over 50 hand-painted murals on the walls and on the ceilings. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place. And one day, I launched that community or that mission. So I had to reach out to one of the ladies who works there, and they were able to give me information. And I ended up writing a scene that took place in the mission where the heroine, Leah Miller, was meeting someone there who had information about the killer, but it turned out to be that the killer was just luring her in there. I had to find a way to get him out before she could capture him. And the lady at the St. Ignatius Mission was so kind to help me out with that. I'm sure she thought that was hilarious, but it was a blast to ride. And again, there's so many interesting things about that area, including the Mission Mountains that kind of backdrop against the community. And for me, mountains add a little bit of suspense to a story. I usually put that in most of my books because I just love the mountains, for one, and they add suspense to a story, I feel.
Wow, that's amazing. So is this the only book that you've had with featuring Leah Miller?
It's the only book that I have with Leah Miller.
Okay.
That's with Ravel right now. I am working on a proposal that will be a continuation possibly for this book. We'll deal with another character that doesn't really have much, it isn't known much in the book, but he will come out hopefully in the next book. So I'm looking forward to, I've been working on that, and I'm looking forward to see what the response is from Ravel with that. But I'm also working on, again, 4 more books with love-inspired suspense that will be taking place in Amish communities. And so it will be interesting to see what they get involved in.
Oh, wow. Do you actually visit these communities, or do you just connect with the people who live there when you do your research?
I would love to. One of these days, I want to just make a big old trip that I can go to all these communities that I've written about. I think that would be so much fun.
Yeah.
But I haven't, but I have been. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
But I've been blessed to have people that I know that live there that can kind of help me fill in the pieces that I can't find online. And that's just amazing. And it's a way to make friendships too. I've made some fairly decent friends like that too, just asking for help. So I'll have to look them up too when I go to visit.
Right. But what inspires you to write mysteries that are set surrounding the Amish communities?
Well, for me, I love to see the contrast between the innocent Amish community as it's perceived, you know, the very simple ways. It's like going back in time. There's not a lot of modern day technology that's used in the community. So you have a very innocent lifestyle there. And then when you add an element like a serial killer or something else that's going on and you bring it into that environment, you've got, it really to me enhances the good versus evil aspect of a story. And I love that. I love having that brought out like that. And just having people that would not normally be put in a position to have to deal with things like surviving, trying to get away from a killer, or whatever the case may be, to see how they react and things like that. I think that's just, to me, that's just brings it out more.
Wow, because I know I've heard that the Amish don't usually involve the police in their
Not
conflicts.
normally. Exactly. And they don't normally do that. And in the case of Among the Innocent, both the heroine and the hero are not Amish at this point. They were once, both of them had ties to the Amish, but Leah, her parents, her family was killed when she was 16. So she left the faith and has now is a police officer. So she's investigating. It starts out as a missing person and it turns into a murder. So she gets involved like that to try to solve the murder. And it ends up that the murder matches her family's MO, and it takes place in the same barn where her family was killed as well. So they realized at that point, her and the chief of police, Dalton Cooper, realized that they have a killer on their hands and they have to do whatever they can to find this guy before he can hurt anybody else.
Right. That I absolutely loved it. So tell me about your process. Did you do a lot of outlining? Did you pants the book, or did it kind of a little bit of both?
You know, I've always been just kind of get the idea in my head and it kind of grows from there. And I haven't really been one to sit down and just outline a book in the past. I would love to be like that, but I just don't seem to operate well like that. So I usually will get an idea and I'll let it just kind of build for a few days and the plot kind of get outlined in my head. And then I'll start writing it down. So I'll get a few ideas and everything. And it never fails for me when I start a story and I know kind of how I want it to go through the ending. When you start writing, it seems like the characters get involved in themselves and they have a different idea sometimes on how they want the story to go and how they want it to end. So they kind of take control sometimes. And I can't tell you how many times I've had it figured out in my head when I start out. And when I sit down to write, it doesn't always end that way. And it's like, okay, that's okay. I like how it ended. You guys did a great job.
Yep, that's the way characters, and as a writer myself, characters often tell me how they want the story to go. So
absolutely, they do.
yeah. So do you have any tips or takeaways you want the listeners to walk away with today?
Well, I hope that the readers on the book will see that there is a faith element throughout, and there's two different struggles that are taking place. Leah has kind of left her faith behind because she's been going through all this, dealing with her grief of her losing her family, and she's become bitter and resentful. Of course, I can understand, but she at the end finds her way back to God and realizes, you know, he never left her. She just kind of pulled away from him. And Dalton, he took it from a different way. He has had many heartaches in his life. He lost his wife to cancer, and of course, his brother, dealing with things that happened to his brother. He came stronger. His faith became stronger, and he relied on God through all those things. So I think the readers, I hope, will see the faith element through story, how each person has dealt with it and the end result for them. And also, I hope that they will enjoy the story. And when they get to the end of the story, I hope they will say, okay, I didn't see that coming, because I think there's a surprise.
Oh yeah, I agree that you don't see the ending coming. I was thinking that she would go back to her Amish roots, but I don't want to spoil it. But believe you me, that's a whole It came as a shock, but a pleasant surprise too. But so go ahead.
No, that was it. I was just going to say it was a bit of a surprise, and I debated on whether or not she would go back. But I thought, you know, after everything that's happened, I think feels like she can be more useful in a position as a police officer.
Wow. Yeah. So where can people find you online?
Alford.net, and I'm on all social medias pretty much. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. I mean, I'm on a lot of different places, so you can find me there. And I love hearing from readers. I hope that readers will contact me and just let me know how they think about my book, what they think about my books, and just say hi, because it's nice. We authors are kind of isolated at times in a way, and it's nice to have somebody say, hi, how you doing? I really like that, or what's coming up next, or whatever. I just really enjoy hearing from readers, and I welcome their input.
And would you mind repeating your website again? You faded out there for a second.
Oh, okay. It's maryalford.net.
Okay, thank you. And I'll have all that in the show notes as well. So do you have a Bible verse you'd like to share with us as we close?
Well, I don't know if I can do it offhand, but it's John 14, 1-3, I believe. And let me just hopefully not mess it up. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again. And where I am, there you will be also. I think I may have messed it up a little bit, but I love that verse so much. And that's always been my favorite verses.
Wow. I mean, I wasn't looking at it, but I do believe that if you paraphrased a bit, at least you're close.
Thank you.
Anyway, so would you like to close us out in prayer?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. Father, I just love you so much. And I'm just thankful for people like Anne that help to spread the word for you, first of all, and for authors to get their books out there. And she's so important to us, Lord, and we really appreciate everything she does. And just thank you for just salvation that you have assured us we can, and just grateful for that. And just thank you for each of us, and just for all that you do, Lord. In Jesus' precious name, I ask it all. Amen.
Amen. So we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys. And remember, folks, your story matters. Have a blessed day, everyone.